Good morning, this beautiful Saturday morning. Yeah, welcome to the second session of manuscript writing of interaction with senior career researchers, in which we are continuously trying to improve capacity of research work in Africa, both for senior career researchers as well as early career researchers. This morning, we'll continue our conversation with senior career researchers, and Professor Morenike will be taking us on advanced manuscript structuring and writing techniques. Do have a nice time with us. Prof, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're having a nice weekend. I apologize for not being able to join us last week, but I'm hoping that we have a wonderful session together this week. The plan is to, kind of revise the engagement. We would have a third session next week and the fourth one immediately after, rather than the 2 weeks intervals. It seems that the 2 weeks intervals may not be working as initially anticipated. So once again, thanks, Kudus. This is focused on senior career researchers. So it means we're not here to teach per se, we're here to dialogue. And I'm hoping in the next 1 hour, as soon as I finish my presentation, we shall have very healthy dialogue about what it means to move this agenda forward. I would like to start by sharing my first slide, which is we need to publish. My first slide actually is the outline, sorry. It wasn't in my head that way. I will be in the next 20, 30 minutes taking us through the structure of an impactful manuscript, why we need to actively promote systematic reviews and meta-analysis, and what does this mean for us going forward in terms of what we do in Nigeria, West Africa, and Africa as a whole. I'll look through the peer review processes in terms of supporting your mentees and supervisees to craft response letters and manage rejection. But I want to start the day off by noting that we need to publish more. This is not about publishing for promotion or in answer to the publish and perish, mantra. It's about understanding what publication truly is about. And that is the foundation or what's informed to what we wanted to do today. For most part, I think in not just in Nigeria, but West Africa and Africa, there's been largely the limitation of publication to the academia. And that's because it is mandatory for you as an academia to publish to get the numbers of manuscripts you need to get promoted. But that's not what we're talking about in research. Research is about addressing a gap in knowledge within the national, regional, or international space. What is it that we don't know, that we need to know more about to be able to do better at what we do? And this becomes very important for us in Africa because we lag behind in that publication. It's not about contest for numbers. It's because the evidence is needed in that public space for global stakeholders to unearth the information that is needed to be able to make decisions for policies and practices. I repeat that. Education is not about the numbers. It's about putting information there, addressing a critical gap in knowledge that international stakeholders garnish to make decisions for policies and programs. You may be surprised to know that what WHO does, it's when it wants to develop its policy documents, is that it actually gives a call out for people to do systematic reviews or umbrella reviews of existing evidence in the field. And it is that evidence that they generate, that they use to actually take decisions. You'll be shocked that some departments are as few as 2 to 3 persons that are making decisions affecting the whole world. But they depend on this unearthing of information. In effective way in Africa, and there is no information that can inform your policies or program, they would use proxy data. For example, or if you're in Africa, for example, we do know that the highest number of publications come from Egypt and South Africa, of course, Nigeria being third down the line, but far, even though we do this, we're far different. The publications that come from Egypt is probably adding Nigeria and South Africa together. In effect, when they start to look at Africa and they're looking for evidence to respond to Nigeria, they don't find the evidence in Nigeria. They're going to use the proxy data either coming from Egypt or South Africa. And of course, what happens? Things don't work. Things don't work because the context of Nigeria, the context of South Africa, the context of Egypt, the context of Cote d'Ivoire, the context of Zimbabwe, the context of Zambia, all differ. So in the absence of evidence, they can do, that's the best they can do, use the proxy data, especially in the current crime, where Africa is more or less often treated as an homogeneous entity. Once there isn't data to show that we're not an homogeneous entity, we add 55 different countries in Africa. They have no options but to treat us like that and use a single data wherever it's available to make decisions, including resource allocation, global resource allocation. So once there's clarity and understanding about what publication is, it then becomes important to drive publication process. The second thing that matters with publication is where it is published. I know for us as academics per se, we might publish anywhere because it's the numbers that count for our publication. But this is about serious business. The way you publish matters because WHO isn't going to unearth data from predator journals or your journal in your faculty that only 50 copies are produced and everything is under the table and there's nobody that has global access. There's no access to this journal except you yourself. So where you publish matters. As much as possible, we're pushing African journals, but African journals also need your publication for their index to improve. And then they become relevant enough for people to source for credible, and I repeat once again, credible information from them. So where we publish matters. And believe me, like I communicate, my friends and I communicate, and I would almost convincingly say my mentees communicate. Writing is as simple as ABC. It's just knowing how to write ABC. Every child knows how to write ABC, but believe me, before they started writing ABC, it took sweats. It took them even years in primary schools. Okay, they did not write ABC the first day they went into school. They probably completed their ABC syllabus after year 1, year 2 in primary school. Okay, but they learned it, and that has been the foundations for their life, even unto death. So we can publish. Anybody can publish. It's about learning the ABCs, and there are rudiments for it. If you don't learn it properly, you won't do well in the publication field. If you learn the rudiment properly and early, then you will do well and flourish in that space. And it is this rudiment that I'm hoping we can share and discuss this morning. And then as senior career researchers, these are transited to the way we manage our early career researchers and mid-career researchers that work with us. So what is it about structuring manuscript in a way that is impactful and will find its place to credible journals and will find its way into policies and programs? First and foremost, we must learn about research guidelines. There are, like I said, there's ABC. ABC means A comes before B becomes C, and C comes before D and becomes after E. And there's a way to write the A. It's the same thing with manuscripts. There are ways you must write your manuscript for it to be meaningful and recognized. And there are research guidelines for this. There are multiple types of research, and there are guidelines as to what is expected in your manuscript. Okay, so if you're doing observational studies, there's the STROBE guideline. If you're doing randomized control trials, there's the CONSORT guideline. If you're doing systematic reviews, there's PRISMA. If you're doing case reports, there's CARE. If you're doing qualitative research, there's SPRQ. And there's every other. Even when you're writing an abstract, there's a structure that is required. So we must be familiar with these reporting guidelines and follow those reporting guidelines, because for high quality journals, this is what is required. They expect you. And even some like PLOS, a few will actually ask you to submit this guideline along with your manuscript submission to show how you have adhered to the guidelines. Okay, so that's the first thing I think for me is most powerful, that we as senior career researchers must understand and be familiar with this guideline and enable our early career researchers. Yes, darling. Enable our early career researchers to adhere to these guidelines when they do their work. Of course, this means, for those of us in the academia, when you have supervisees that you are working on thesis with, be they even undergraduate, and I'll come to that, they must adhere to these guidelines in translating their thesis to manuscripts. When we ask them to write manuscripts, which of course many times would generate from thesis, and once again, I reemphasize both undergraduate and postgraduate students, we must support them to answer valid contemporary questions. As you do know, I recall some time ago where I was working with a senior colleague that said, "Oh, um, fellowship exams, undergraduate exams is just for them to learn so they can be repeating things." No, you don't waste people's time. You don't waste resources just to do things so as to learn. You learn in the class and you apply it by doing the research work. And when you're doing the research work, the critical thing about the research work is that you answer a valid question. There must be a gap in knowledge that you are addressing. Whatever level of research you do, very small, very big, one objective, five objectives, there must be a gap that you're feeding. You can't be repeating things because we want to repeat it there. We don't have that resources. And you can't waste it because you're doing research. So you must be answering a question. It must be a contemporary question also. What is relevant at this time? Of what is the critical question at this time? And once again, it must be an unknown. That's it. We call it equipoise. There's truly must be an unknown. That's what is equipoise. So there might be an unknown that is not truly unknown. The kind of example I give is that I work in Ife, and we have Elisha, which is about 15 minutes drive from Ife. And then I say, oh, we have studied fibroid, the incidence of prevalence of fibroid in Ife, but we have not studied in Elisha, and therefore I want to do a study in Elisha. It doesn't make sense because the findings from Ife can be extrapolated to Ife. The prop is so close, and it's not likely that there's any significant distinction in the population of Ife or Ife. So is that truly an equipoise? Is that truly an unknown there? No. However, there might be an unknown because of the difference in diet, and you already justified or made it clear that the diet affects the incidence of fibroid. And those in Ileife actually eat food, which its composition is different from Elisha, where they eat yam, and therefore it might impact the difference. Then there's a reason. So once again, it's about addressing an unknown, and an unknown, not just an unknown, but a true unknown, which is called equipoise. And when we do this work, the world has moved away from just doing siloed research or single auto-focused research to multidisciplinary research, which informs the outlook. So you're working with people in medicine, maths, engineering, humanities, arts, so that the outlook, it's a lot more comprehensive. You're looking at questions and answering them through multiple lenses. And where it's possible, please encourage your mentees or supervisors to do teamwork. If you're going to do a study, for example, I am in Ife, I work with the Obafemi Awolowo University, and then I decide to do studies on students in humanities, and now it affects their oral health. Why don't I do students in humanities affecting oral health and move away from Ife and do it nationally? Believe me, it's about the same strength, about the same investments, because you would have collaborators in other institutions in Nigeria, and what you're going to present may be a lot better in terms of its focus for Nigeria or maybe Southwest Nigeria, rather than an institution, because extrapolating the finding of an institution to represent Nigeria or represent a country is very difficult. Nobody's going to use that for policies and practices, except if your institution wants to use that data for itself. But extrapolating that data for a national representing nations, it's going to be left on the shelf. Okay, so as much whatever it is that you want to do, move away from the siloed things that more or less looks like audits. You want to look at patient's profile in a particular hospital. Believe me, that's an audit. It's not a research. It's just an audit for that hospital. But once you now look at it for Southwest Nigeria or the whole of the country, then you're doing research saying something that is generalizable. I repeat, when you do research, it's about generalizability. So when you're doing something focused to an entity that cannot be generalized to a larger population, then it's less useful. So those are the kind of, and it doesn't take a lot more than what you're doing because you have a community of people interested in research. I recall very vividly when I started my international research and I was going to do something during the time of COVID. We generated data from 22,000 persons from 151 countries, and we're 48 of us. I didn't have a grant. I still didn't have a grant to do that. And from that collective piece of work, we'd written 34 manuscripts already, and it's still ongoing. And that's one of 3 data batches. We still have 2 data batches we've not touched. It was just going out there in the public space and asking, are you interested? Of course, researchers are interested in collaboration. And that's how I got 48 collaborators to do this piece of excellent work. All right. So there are researchers out there. And that's why you, as the mentee and mentor and supervisor, because your network is accessible for your students to be able to do this kind of things. It's you that becomes the driver to be able to make this work for these individuals. And believe me, I've done all similar things for my own undergraduate students. So, and finally, when we're talking about research questions, you must show that it's derived from concepts. And oftentimes, where I am, I teach about theoretical concept or conceptual framework. It must come from somewhere. You just don't wake up and decide, I want to see the association between age and hair growth. Why? What's the fundamentals? Why would there be a possibility of an association? That's the concept, and that's why we talk about conceptual framework, or conceptual framework being driven by a theoretical framework. So it must derive from something, not just something coming out from mid-air. So when we write a manuscript, once again, it must be impactful. Like it's summarizing what I'd said. The introduction must highlight that there's a gap in knowledge that you're addressing. But the next section, which is the methodology, must be written like an SOP, which means the manuscript that you and your mentee, supervisee are writing must be such that anyone picks it anywhere in the world and does not have to get on a phone and call you and say, oh, what were you doing here, or what does it mean? Many of the manuscripts you write, tends to be long from this part of the world, tends to be so heavily focused on the introduction. And you find out of a 5-page manuscript, the introduction is 3 pages, and then the methodology is half. Nobody does that in a high quality journal. The methodology is the bread, is the meat, is the soul of your manuscript. It tells us that the piece of finding that you have is valid because you've used a valid methodology. So when you're writing a 5-piece manuscript, the introduction is just 1 page and your methodology is 3 pages because it's the soul. Every other thing you do is very minor in terms of what you generate, because the methodology must be written, as concisely as possible, yet it has all the ingredients. And please go check the guidelines. It will show you all the evidence that needs to be in this broth, soup. And when you go to that guideline, you see that every section is there. It's including the title, what the content of the title is. But when you find that, look at it, you find out that methodology, the aspect of methodology is about 1/3 of the manuscript. It talks about the title, it talks about the abstract, it talks about the introduction, it talks about the result, discussion, and your conclusion. But the requirements for methodology constitute 1/3 of the requirements of what the manuscript needs. So the methodology is key, and you as a senior career researcher working with your mentoring supervisor must focus on this and ensure that this is comprehensively done and appropriate. Of course, part of the methodology includes the fact that you must have gotten ethics clearance, and the ethics clearance, the study was done within the period of the ethics clearance. Please go to +1. You cannot submit papers into +1 anymore without you submitting your ethics clearance certificate along with it, and I can assure you that it's a matter of time. Many other journals are going to jump on board this. And the second thing about the assessment is that when they look at it, if you collected your data outside the period of approval of the ethics clearance, either after it or before it, they're not going to take the manuscript. And I can assure you, it's going to spread soon. They just started this, I think, last year. But before you know, it's going to catch up in the world. All right, so please ensure that ethics approval is obtained for whatever research you're doing and you're about to publish. Anything involving humans dead or alive requires an ethics approval. The next session to your manuscript is the results. Please ensure that the results is focused on answering the study objectives. When we do thesis, we usually write a lot more. You write so much volumes. But when you write manuscript, it becomes focused. It must be focused. One of the things I see people do is that they do a thesis that has 3, 4 objectives, 3, 4, 5 objectives. And in a manuscript, they want to write it all inside the manuscript, saying a papa sip. It's not possible. Each objective itself, once the objective is distinct, becomes a manuscript. This is one of the things I think we need to train our mentees and our supervisors to learn. It's just one objective for one manuscript, trying to put 3 distinct objectives in a manuscript. You're not going to make, it's very unlikely you're going to make a success of it. Of course, once again, remember, I'm talking about top quality journals. I'm talking about Q1, Q2 journals. This is where my focus is when I teach and train. I'm not saying anything we write doesn't pass. It will always pass wherever we want it to go. But once our aspirations is to get manuscripts written in a way that is going to translate for use going forward, this is my focus for this session. So just focus your results to answer the study objective. This is not a place to say because you used variables like age, sex to determine the association between air and age. It doesn't mean this you're going to spend time talking about the difference between the male and female in your age, in your data, the difference between age, the difference between socioeconomic strata. No, it's not relevant because it doesn't answer the result. Just focus on the result of the study objective. And if doing your research, you found something interesting, then report it separately in another manuscript. There might always be things, spurious findings from your research. We talk about that as secondary and tertiary objectives, because the primary objective of your study is what you determine the sample size for. Those things I'm talking about, apologies, I'm a lot more focused about medical research or quantitative research. I do acknowledge that there are things and peculiarities for qualitative research or research, in the humanities, and I'll try to bring these examples along, and I hope you can bring it when we're discussing. The next session to results is discussion, which is about explaining what you find, not comparing what you found. Many times what we do is compare. Oh, I found this and it's similar to what is found in Norway and different from what is found in Senegal. This is not what discussion is about. Discussion is explaining what you found based on your objective. Your objective sought to look for something, and this is what you found based on your study of the goal of your study objective. And this is the reason, the possible reasons, okay, for what you have found. And that is a whole lot of exploration on itself. You might have to look for new text to try to explain whether it's positive or negative, which means I found this. It's surprising finding. Maybe this is the reason why I found this is exactly what is happening in Kenya and is exactly what is happening in Sweden. You must explain why it's exactly what is happening there, why my own finding is also exactly what is happening there. So you must explain the finding, whatever it is, or what you found is different or is higher or lower. You must explain it. That is the power of discussion. This is your soul in the manuscript. Your introduction is not your soul. The introduction is harnessing evidence that there is in the space and finding what the gap is, and I'm choosing to address that. Now I've addressed it. I am explaining it. This is you in that manuscript. And I tell people that this is the reason your manuscript is quoted. The manuscript is not quoted because of your introduction. The manuscript is not quoted for most times for your methodology, except it's very peculiar, it's novel, and if somebody wants to adapt it, including the fact that you have pilot tested and validated an instrument and people are looking forward to using that instrument and therefore quote it. Your results, yes, is very important and people are going to use the results, but your results becomes discussed in the discussion. And your discussion also highlights gaps that people can further explore. And this is the reason why people quote your manuscript. And then, of course, you conclude. Your conclusion is focused on the objective, including a recommendation that might come out from the finding. So when we're looking for impactful manuscript, it's about looking for evidence around in terms of gap. So our mentees, our supervisors must have the power of observation. We must continuously train them to have the power of observation. This is one of the weaknesses you find in many African communities. We are not very aware or conscious of our environment, and therefore we don't pick gaps of things that we otherwise would want to explore. So it's about generating questions from events we see, from observations around, and then wanting to explore that, because that definitely is a why. Why is this? Why do people always change their toothbrush every 3 months? Why do people always know when they sleep? It is that why that becomes a question. And then encourage them to jot down this thoughts, and change it to a question, and then study around it to see if there hasn't been an answer. If there hasn't been an answer, then that becomes a research question. And then you start to develop the study around this. Once people do right, please encourage them to always share with their peers to make inputs. And once again, recall, I encourage that this must be teamwork. I also encourage people, I talk about being native intelligent. When you go into top journals, for most part, research is American in nature. It's English. One of the things I just came back from Kenya, also training some early career researchers with African citizenship. You also finding people that speak French, people that speak Portuguese are writing their manuscripts in English, because it's English. It's not that that's the way it should go. Things will evolve with time. But if you really want to get yourself into that space and be visible with your research and have it accessible, English is the language of research. And even within English, it's a lot more American than British. Why am I saying this? Without understanding this, the way to communicate your manuscript, you won't understand that. For example, like I teach, we as Africans, and I studied it for my master's in education, and I found that was a big problem between students and teachers. We we speak as Africans and expect the other party to translate and understand the meaning. We never fully tell you what we want to do. Like my Nigerian mom, and I share. You ask your research question, Mom, do I go buy bread for breakfast? You know what your mom is? My mom would say, go buy, which means you should interpret based on our tone and our accent that you should not go and buy. Okay? But uh, a young child from America, whether you say go buy or go buy, whatever tone you use, the word is go buy. She's going to take the money and go and buy that bread, not understanding your tone. That is we as Africans. We don't usually tell you what we mean. We expect you to extrapolate and make inference from what I've said to understand what I mean. And sadly, we bring this to our writing. We are verbose. You go on for 5 paragraphs and there's no clarity about what you're saying. There's just no clarity. An African might internalize and say, oh, this is what you're saying, and can leave that place and work on that assumption. And she likely be right. But for the place you are going, which is the British American place, they don't understand it, and so it gets rejected. So normally what they do for them is that a sentence, you start your sentence by saying what you want to say. Your mother is dead, your mother is dead. They don't go perambulating and telling you your mother is dead. And then the rest of the paragraph explains what causes the death, or why, or what the nature of the death. They start their sentence. The first paragraph starts, the sentence opening the paragraph says what you want to say. And then the rest of the paragraph talks about what you want to say. A paragraph conveys just a thought, and then it transits to the next paragraph to convey another thought. One sentence would also say all you want to communicate. You don't use 5 sentences to say one thing. Just use one sentence to say one thing. And then once we're communicating, it matters that we learn to be gender and culture sensitive in these communications, and use inclusive language. I remember one of the mentees we were training, and when she wrote her manuscript, by the time I was halfway through the discussion, I had to call her. I said, Madam, you are a pastor in church, right? It's so obvious, because the way you write your discussion around female sex workers is so judgmental, so heavily judgmental, that even me, myself, I can't even continue to read it. It's so biased. And we find ourselves bringing ourselves into this, into writing. These are things we must train ourselves around. To dissociate ourselves within our manuscript. It's a normal tendency. Without the consciousness for this, we would not learn to do otherwise. All these issues I've raised is so that there is a level of consciousness of how ourselves are into this manuscript, and it introduces bias in ways that top manuscripts are not able to associate with it, and then it gets a reject. Many times when we get rejects without comments, it's because of those things they don't know how to manage, and then they just send it back. Of course, our local journals may very well understand, and it may pass. One of the other things I also encourage people is that you must encourage your mentee supervisors to generate ideas from written manuscripts. I've read a number of fellowship books in my time, not too many, few, but the few you just find out that they develop an idea from a manuscript. You just see one manuscript and then they run. No, please, for your mentees, encourage them 1 month before they start working with you, writing with you. They do 1 month reading of manuscripts, at a minimum of 30 manuscripts. Like I share, I do read 100 manuscripts in 3 years, and I did that consecutively for 2 years. And the ideas I get from it, 4 or 5 years, I'm still running. Even 2 weeks ago, I still went to look at those research ideas, and I say I've still not completed as forfeit. And this is about 3 years of reading 100 manuscripts for 3 months. That's what I do January to March. When I read, I read my 100 manuscripts. So they must, before they start, let them read manuscripts. They read first, there's always something in the reference, they go back and continue reading and jotting, so they can generate true ideas. But the power of reading through these manuscripts is the connections you make. You're not just focused on one. You've seen so many things. You've seen the bigger picture in your field, and then you can generate and link even when you're doing your discussions. Of course, it's not just manuscripts. Let them read out that outside their fields. One of the things I do is subscribe to blogs from everywhere. HIV, everywhere. Blogs are very few words that they share on lists, and you can read and you just understand things and you see things from a different eye, and rather than the strict jacketed eye that you live in. Human beings is not one, it's not siloed. Human beings are influenced by the environment, and you must bring that perspective into whatever we're doing so that it becomes valid. We must listen to social and medical news. That helps us get ideas. We have to be universal in an outlook and be more of a listener than a talker, to be able to, I got that from Sharon Elia. I would say that specifically national, when I was working with the microbiota trial networks, one of the 6 networks that NIH used to support. And Sharon would be there in that room. She speaks last. She's the head of the team. And you would see her actively listening to everything. And by the time Sharon opens her mouth, it is brilliant because she listens. She does a lot more listening. And she's broad in her outlook. She listens to everybody, community, basic science, everywhere. And then she comes as the lead and summarizes, and it's brilliant, faultless for most times when she comes to that conclusion. So that's why a lot more listeners are a lot better in pulling information and synthesizing and making a valid position at the end of the day. And of course, we have to be flexible. We can't be positioned. Please know that manuscript writing is about being objective and sharing your perspective. It's not about pushing your agenda, or your propaganda to the manuscript. No. And people read through this and they see it and they won't touch it. One of the things I encourage is to assess your own self. You've read the manuscript, 10, 15, 20 years, nobody's quoted it, not even you yourself has quoted it, then there's a problem with the manuscript. It's not found to be relevant. If you're really doing something and answering a question in the field, you would find that, by 5 years, somebody is picking and using your paper as fundamentals for their own work, including you, would also likely refer to your manuscript because you'll be building on the foundations of work that you've done with your own group. So once again, manuscript is about being objective. It doesn't mean you lose your values and your personal beliefs, but it's about being objective. You cannot influence your findings and the interpretations of your finding by your bias. I wanted us to bring the issue of systematic reviews and meta-analysis here. We do know, for many of us, we know that the top level of evidence, there is a systematic review, and meta-analysis is the gold standard of evidence. It's about rigor, transparency, reproducibility. Although it's secondary data analysis, it's about summarizing existing research evidence, but it's a rigorous process. It's not an easy process. And one of the things my colleagues and I found out when we assess the field is that Africa is way behind in generating systematic reviews and meta-analysis in the public space, way behind. We also did an assessment of my own field, which is dentistry, and we found out that from Africa, what is generated, 98% of what is generated is cross-sectional studies and less so clinical trials and systematic reviews and meta-analysis. Cross-sectional studies is way down in the level of evidence generation. So what are we talking about? Yet we have PhDs, number of PhD students within our space that should be doing this. Whatever topic you want to do, you can only justify that there's a gap in the field by doing a systematic review and a meta-analysis or doing a scoping review. And it is only then that you truly find a gap. You can't find a gap by reading 1, 2, 3 literatures. It's by doing a systematic review, generating, synthesizing the evidence there is, and that's a powerful paper on its own. So I brought this up because I really want us as senior career researchers within the space, Nigeria, Africa, to drive this. And we must find a way of putting this as part of our output of our PhD programs and, for our mentors, fellowships, whatever it is. We have to find a way of getting this there and getting it in the space. It's combining multiple studies to increase statistical powers. And this is what people unearth to inform guidelines, policies, and clinical decisions. Okay, so we have to be found in that space and we need to do more and not just this kind of evidence production. So yeah, that's why I raised the 3 questions. How are we thinking of including this in our postgraduate programs? And is it feasible to even get our undergraduates to do this? And considering grading different forms of research literatures for academic promotion. I know in my institution, one of my most laughable points is, people do write literature review and publish it. This is not about literature review and publishing it. Evidence synthesis is way beyond that. We have bibliometric, we have a scoping review, we have systematic review, we have narrative review, we have rapid, there are various forms of reviews, and this is evidence synthesis. It has a format. Remember, I said go to strokes. It has a format. It has definitely what to do. And that is how you can truly say there's a gap in the space. All right. So there's different forms of reviews. I remember when we used to do narrative review or something, and then people started doing systematic review. And then when I think it's my faculty, I don't think it's the whole university, that says once you do reviews, you can't get more than 3/5. And I laughed. Oh, geez. There are levels of reviews that are really solid, but even at the brilliance, they'll give you 3. What does this mean? I don't know how it works in your school, but what does it mean for us to get this kind of reviews into the academic promotion space? And then finally, of course, when you teach your mentees and supervisors how to write manuscripts, you also must teach them how to handle peer review processes. This is also one of the shabbiest points that I've found that people handle poorly. We must ask them to please respectfully respond to reviewers' comments. Any reviewer that handles your manuscript, I'm sure you know it's voluntary. It's not paid for. And so you can respond to reviewers rudely. You must appreciate that they committed their time and effort to do a critical review of your manuscript, and therefore respond politely to the effort that they invested in that. And if there is anything that is not appropriate, there's a way to handle this. So I also encourage my mentees, you must look forward to comments. That's what strengthens your paper. If a paper comes back without comments, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. Your peers are reviewing and they say your paper is perfect. It's a rarity. It's not a common thing, and that's one of the distinguishing points with predator journals. They just publish what you bring. Peer is supposed to look at it, critique it, and give you points to strengthen it, so that truly, when the evidence is unearthed for policies and clinical decision making, it is valid. It is valid information that people are nursing. So once they send your comments, embrace it. And many times comment seeks for clarity. If you meant something and they are not, the reviewer isn't getting it, it's because it's not clear. So make it clearer. And where corrections need to, when you need to correct the peer reviewer's comments, do it respectfully. Appreciate that we're all learning, okay? So provide the evidence to support your position. One of the kind of position comments I often get in my when people send peer reviews, because when I write my discussion, my first paragraph is the summary. My second paragraph is my strength. My third paragraph is my gaps. Many times I get comments that no, the limitations should be last. And then I sent to them the stroke and I said, look, the stroke requires that your limitation is written upfront before the discussion, because this way the readers are able to read your discussion, understanding the biases that there are, the limitations to the interpretation. And then I send the reference and nobody troubles me on it. Okay. So we must be respectful. They also learn. We are all learning, and your comments can help people learn. Please ensure that the peer review process is thorough and the English, everything is fine. And when you get the Kali proof, please read through it carefully. I've in more recent times, I've seen a number of my manuscripts and I wonder, oh, how didn't I catch this error? And support your mentees to read through. You also read to mark corrections, pay attention to it, and return the Kali proof in time. And of course, when you publish, to celebrate. It's a big deal. It's a big deal when you celebrate. It's not a norm that you just get your papers through. So please celebrate, take a break, laugh, judge, share with your friends, share with your peers, put it on your door, stick it, disseminate it on the social media, inform your colleagues in the faculty, because the more you also disseminate, the more visible it is, and the more it's accessible to people. I disseminate a lot of my research through LinkedIn. ResearchGate is there. There's so many academic social spaces, and rejoice, and immediately put it in your CV so that you don't forget. All right. And when there's a rejection, help your mentees manage it. This is one of gaps in people managing, and they get very disappointed and they don't even want to go on. Enable them learn that it's part of life. There is no academia that isn't going to reject, and it's part of life. It's part of our system. So help them know it's part, and they must learn to use the comments from the reject when they receive it. It's not all the time their comments, to revise the manuscript and send to another manuscript review, the comments with them, take it forward and enable them find another journal that they submit to. They must treat reject as normal. And it's not an indictment of competency. It's just that they have information to sharpen their skills, and they get better at this with time. I'm almost finishing. Please encourage your mentees, mentors to recognize that practice makes perfect, and the more they review other manuscripts, the more they get ideas, and the more they keep themselves current. And even you, as senior career researchers, please invest time as a social responsibility to review manuscripts. Please have acknowledged that every single manuscript you yourself publish a minimum of 2 reviewers read it. You yourself, as your social responsibility, if your aim is to publish 3, 4 papers a year, please review 8, 10, 12. Okay, you must invest in the process. We all know it's voluntary, so this is our own social responsibility. Read regularly so that you understand context for the issues we're doing, and we must encourage our mentees to not compromise the truth. Research is not about them, it's about the societies for good. And when we compromise the truth in terms of publications, we're setting a faulty foundation for others who will be using our documents to inform the piece of work they do. And please check grammar. English is not our first language. We must acknowledge this and make sure that we use AI tools or whatever to improve on the grammar. Have somebody else read the manuscript. Nobody's stealing your ideas. Have somebody read and give a final comment, and then build on your work in your subsequent research. These are my final words. Manuscript writing is a skill anyone can acquire it. Let's get ourselves trained to do it well and get better. One of the things I've seen with my manuscript training workshop, and Kudus can also learn that, is when you have people starting to write properly, it's difficult initially, but it becomes a second habit once you know what to do. It's almost you just wake up and kind of know what it is. But please start first by using guides and ensure every component of the research guides um, forms the framework of the elements that needs to be there. But that's not all there is. It's not enough to have a framework. It's very important to also acquire writing skills so that that framework, as we write, reads almost like a perfect novel. And it's easy for the person to read. So we must also not only learn the research guidelines, but also learn to write in a way that is flowing, is entertaining, is interesting, and everybody wants to read your work. There's always new skills to acquire. Please always acquire new skills. I have been in this field forever. I love doing this piece of work, but I continue to grow in terms of skills. And please, let's be responsible that we as scientists need to protect the integrity of our field research. So research misconduct, we must desist for, and we must do everything to protect. Grandma. Yes, darling. I'll be with you in a minute. Apologies, it's my grandson. And we have everything to do to protect the integrity of the enterprise. And that includes you as a senior career researcher, is mentoring appropriately and helping you continuing to learn. And that informs the way you mentor your supervisor and your mentee. On that note, I would like to say thank you for listening. And yeah, over to you, Kudus.
Thank you very much, Prof, for that discussion and lecture on advanced manuscript writing. There's a lot to pick from the discussion. I'm sure the audience have picked a lot, and that will set the ball rolling for the discussion session, which we have 15 minutes to do. So I'm looking through the chat box if there is any question or comment so far. Okay, a lot of accolades for you, Ma. All right.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe we'll look
I'll take one or
also at
two.
the yes, maybe we'll look at the what's it, the YouTube
YouTube.
space also. Yes.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay. I think that's I can't switch it off now. Give me a minute, please. I'll be with you. Yes. Oh yes, homeschool with grammar. Yes, Dana. Um, yes, the issue of rejection and training mentees is somewhat ignored. Yes, agreed. There must be a consciousness to doing this. Thank you. I like you. Thanks for raising that. There must be a consciousness to actively training mentees. One of my greatest success story is very recently. I saw a mentee who went through the Oral Health Initiative program. It's a 12-month program that we've been running with NIMA for the last 2 years. And then she also got onto another program with our support. And then I saw a publication in BMC Public Health, BMC Public Health, a scoping review with our men supervisors. I felt blessed. I just felt, yes, I'm done. This is the kind of thing we're looking at. This is somebody that came into a program with little competency. She's learned the skills, but not only learned the skills, she's transferred it to our mentees or supervisors, and then they went to a Q1 level journal. BMC Public Health is not an easy place to go to. I celebrated that and I just relaxed. I said, yes, Marenike, yeah, this is one success story, and I'm glad we've invested in that here. So it's a conscious effort. It takes time. It can be stressful. But I tell you, as a teacher, our reward is seeing students do well. Thanks for raising that. There's a question from Margaret. Okay, that says, when your manuscript is rejected without comments, can any deductions be made from that? I think it's a number of things. When manuscripts are rejected without comments. One, it might be that it's not. They would often tell you why. If it's that you're submitting, your manuscript does not fit in. The manuscript does not fit in. When it's rejected, it's usually from the editorial table. And the second is when, and because I've been in the editorial team, when there's evidence of what's this thing? Plagiarism. when the evidence that you've copied text is high. That level differs for journals. For journals like those top journals, it might be 17%. For BMC oral out is 27%. But when there's evidence that you have copied without attribution from other journals, they will reject it. But they will never tell you the reason. They'll just say, oh, we have many, or, they'll be polite because they're not going to put reasons so that if you don't, go sue them or things like that. So that's another reason when there's a lot of copying from, when they see repeat, um, transcript, and they do that from the editorial desk. A third reason why you might get a reject without comments is when they don't understand that communication. I've seen that a lot. We ramble. We're Africans. We speak a lot in parables. And because we do that, we ramble a lot. They don't understand it. They can't understand it. So they don't have a comment to what you say. They just reject. These are my own three reasons why many times you get rejected without comments. But we go back. It matters that we get comments. I just want to lay down here that I started my writing career without guidance. But what I do is that I will send to the top journal. I send it to always Q1 journal, knowing that it will get rejected. I'm very conscious they will get rejected, but I know they will send comments. So I now use that comments to revise my manuscripts, and then I send it to another Q1 journal and it gets accepted. That was how I learned writing, and there are times I look at my very preliminary writings and I'm still impressed with myself that, wow, Morenike, you did good, But these were ways, and one of the other ways I learned writing was that I always got the top best journal whenever I want to write something on that topic and put it side by side, and then I look, what did they write? How did they do it? What were they looking at? And that's how I modeled my writing against top writing. Yeah. Over to you, Kudus. I don't know if we have
Yes,
comments.
ma'am. So I'm going to the YouTube channel to pick some questions. Someone is asking, reviews are not encouraged as part of academic assessment in my university. Therefore, committing such time to it is discouraging.
I think that's a good question. And I think what I encourage is you yourself must understand what your focus is. If your focus is about promotion, and that's all you want to be, it's a goal, but I think there can be better goals. If you're planning to do work in a way that you are visible and you are relevant in the international space, then do work that is visible and relevant in the international space. Policies change, and if you're working in university, you're going to be a top person in the future. You're going to understand the power of systematic reviews and meta-analysis, and you're going to help change policies to prioritize that as evidence of work. It's rigorous. If you start to do systematic reviews and meta-analysis, it's more rigorous than all those primary studies we do. It's a lot of, and if they publish it, I'm not talking of publication in Predator journals. So somebody publishes your systematic review, it's a lot of work and it's kudos for you. So once again, define who you want to be. I want my work to be feasible and be relevant to policies and programs in national, international, and regional spaces. And therefore, I would contribute to that meaningfully by doing things that are important for the space. Thank you. Over to this.
Yes, ma'am. There are a couple of calls requesting that we will have a training on systematic review and meta-analysis. I think we may
Yeah.
consider it the next cycle of training.
All right, but it's rigorous. What if you want to do a training on systematic review and meta-analysis? You can't do it like we do manuscript training. It's as rigorous. We're currently doing one now for the oral health initiative program, and just to teach you what you need to do on hands-on. It's 3 months. It's 3 months, and it's just a small course. It was an extensive process to recruit 10 people, 11 people out of 81 applications. And even as at that, at this point in time, we're still dropping 2 people. It's really rigorous. And apologies, people are not really invested in that time. They want quick fixes. We'll try and pull it through. We have to get people who can invest their time, and I truly celebrate Professor Elijah, who's invested that 3 months time. It's 3 months, one day every week, one day every week, one day every week. And even when we structured it as one day every week, we still had to do extra sessions to enable people learn. It's not a theoretical thing. If you don't lay your hands on doing it, it's a waste of time, you know. So we will try. I'm not committing because I know the investment this takes, and we have to do more. I appreciate that. We'll list it, Kudus, and see what we want to do. I think this year we already
Okay.
have our calendar
Fixed,
full
yeah.
this year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We have
thank you.
6 months students training. Okay. The next question is there a need for ethical approval for case presentation? I guess case report, that's what the person is asking. Yeah.
There's an ethical approval that you need for every single type of report. Once you're doing any research that you're doing, you need, even for the literature reviews, you have to register it in Open Science Foundation. You have to register it in Prospero. When you're doing clinical trials, you still have to open. There are places where you do this registrations, but every single type of research needs evidence of oversight. That is what ethics approval is. There's evidence of oversight. So even when you're doing case reports, please get your ethics approval for it. Over.
Okay, ma. Someone is asking if article is rejected based on novelty, what should one do, knowing that there are actually no new topics, virtually no new topics?
There are new topics, believe me. There are a million and one new topics. Um, and where you will get a reject based on novelty is usually the Q1 journals. I tell people because they are at that point. So they kind of are selective. Um, I share, if you look at something like JAMA, Nature, New England Journal of Medicine, the acceptance rate is as low as 18%. 18%. But when you look at the volume of manuscripts they publish per year, you see that they've published over 1,000. So when the rejection rate is when an acceptance rate is as low as 18%, yet they're publishing thousands, you know that they don't have time for relevance. Anything that is crap, they just send it. They just send it away. However, lower journals can take that. Novelty, even for PMC or novelty is not the goal, it's the quality of writing. And many journals, it's not novelty, it's the quality of the writing. However, if you think you have novelty, there are multiple journals. If they reject one, go to the next. You find a house. I've had an article that I found a house for it after 2 years, roaming around. I think it was challenging the thoughts and the issues I brought there, but they finally had a house. They found a house in the Q1 journal, Frontiers journal. After roaming around for 2 years. So find a house. There are too many journals around the world. High quality journal, I mean, that you can find a house for your article. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, ma. Talking about high quality journals, someone is asking that Q1 journals, about the affordability of Q1
I'm
journals
sure that's
for
it.
students.
That's always the excuse.
For students, yeah.
For everybody. If you make a case, they would waive your APCs. I've published over 400 journals. When I pay APC, I choose to. I want to pay. So it's a. I'm sorry, I call it a rambling. Everybody's always saying APC. When but there are over 1,000 journals where there's no APC. Any journal published by Springer's publish hundreds of journals. All Springer journals are APC free for Africans. Even when you get to the Q1, just say, explain that you're from low middle income country. I went to AIDS care or something, and they did it right. It's not there that they give APC waiver. And I wrote instantly. It didn't take them a day. They waived it for me. So, yeah, I think it's excuse. There are a million APC-free journals out there. There are many. There are just many. Also, there are just too many APC-free journals out there. Look for it. And that's why as SCR, you're supposed to support your mentee supervisors to find that. All right. Yeah.
Okay, I'll take this from Iragbonus. So she's asking, my question is about manuscript not based on original research, such as perspective pieces, viewpoints, and editorials. Do you think we should pursue more of these as senior career researchers? If yes, in your opinion, what proportion of our manuscripts should be dedicated to this kind of writing?
I think that's an excellent question. I think as senior career researchers, it is something you must do because you have the experience, you have valid opinions. But at that point, as a senior career researcher, there is no proportion. As a professor, I invest my time to do a lot of perspectives because I am well known and respected in the field. And therefore, when I'm writing perspectives, people listen and want to read. There's no proportion to that. I don't need manuscripts for promotion. So there's no proportion. And I don't think you should limit yourself about proportion. Once again, I am encouraging you here to do manuscript writing as a responsibility for national development and not as a promotional thing. So you can't be thinking of proportion. If there's something to share as a viewpoint, as an editorial, share it because it has to be shared. That's the primary thing, not because, my proportion, my perspective is now more than my primary subject. Okay, so I'm going to keep it in my box. There's no point. Share and be it's your focus. Once again, I respect everybody's focus, but I am encouraging us as my last point here that you, as an academic, senior academic researcher, you are invested in national development. That is why your salary is paid. That is why the academia was born. Go read the statutes of fellowships, National Postgraduate College, and the university. It's for national development and not for career. Career development is there. So you must be invested in that. And if, once again, I repeat, you have viewpoints, editorials, perspective to write, share it. If it doesn't enter your promotion career pathway, it's okay. Share it and don't put it in your promotion. But the world is seeing you and listening to you and inviting you around to come and share this perspective. There are people that are invited just because of the single work and a single publication. They're invited everywhere. Okay. So I wish you well in doing this. Focus on who you want to be, the bigger picture. Promotion always comes. Promotion will always come. I thank Professor Ojofe Itimi late now. That was what he did. Promotion will always come. You get it. But focus on the bigger picture. After you've become a professor, so what? What next? If you've vested all your life just chasing professorship, build a career that is far bigger than that. On that note, I want to say thank you. We're one minute ahead of over time. We try not to. Over to you, Kudus. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, man. And if you have other questions, you can bring it up on the platform. It will be addressed over there. Like Prof rightly said, it's top of the hour, 2 minutes past the hour, and we'll be rounding up today's session. But just to bring it to our attention, the Manuscript Writing Hub Academy is having a very important conference, virtual conference, which will be holding 20 to 22nd of May. If you've not registered, please kindly ensure that you register. It promises to be a very impactful and illuminating conference. We have a lot of papers we presented and keynote speakers across the globe who will be coming up on the platform to discuss with us about key issues on African research and African researchers. On that note, I wish you a lovely weekend. See you next week when we'll continue the conversation. Okay, there's a question. The link will be shared shortly. Thank you. Okay, the link has been shared on the chat box for those who want to register through it.
Please also share it on the YouTube link. Yeah.
I already
Thank you.
did, ma. I already shared, ma.